My mom runs the board. You can't touch me. That's what the kid said while standing in my bedroom at 2 a.m. calm as a yoga coach, digging through my desk like he had a receipt. And yeah, I was barefoot in ridiculous hot dog pajama pants, trying to look intimidating with a heavy flashlight that suddenly felt like a plastic spoon. He wasn't scared. He was certain like consequences were for other people, like the rules bent around his last name. I told him that was my work laptop. He smiled and said, "Individual jobs serve individual interests. Community enhancement serves everyone." Mom will explain. And you know what I mean? Sometimes your brain needs a second just to process the level of audacity in front of you. I called 911 right there. He didn't flinch. He sorted my gear into a neat little stack like a personal shopper for thieves, and when the officers showed up, he leaned toward one and said, "Just call Marla. She's the HOA president. She'll verify my assignment. Like breaking and entering had a syllabus. The name hit one officer different. A small flicker behind the eyes that said, this wasn't the first time he'd heard it. And as they walked, the kid out, he kept explaining who in the neighborhood needed my tablet and why my camera would be more useful in someone else's house. And I stood there on my own lawn under streetlight, thinking, this can't be real. But it was. Morning came with a knock that sounded polite and still felt like a command. And there she was, clipboard tucked under her arm like a scepter blazer. So sharp it might cut you smile that never reached her eyes. "Good morning. I'm Marla Pierce. There's been a misunderstanding." She slid laminated, stamped, color-tabbed documents onto my entry table like she was checking me into a program. "I never signed up for community resource alignment," she said. "Restorative service hours. We identify underutilized assets and reallocate them to families who need them more." I said, "Your son broke into my house," she said. Soft voice, patient tone. "He doesn't have a master key. He has a community mandate. We're helping Pine Hollow grow out of harmful individualism. This can be handled through mediation." And yeah, that happened. Detective Grant Morales arrived. Steady eyes. Low voice took his time with her papers. Asked careful questions. The way you do when someone might be powerful or dangerous or both. And Marla kept that same posture of certainty, like authority lived, wherever she stood. That night I became a printer, a laptop, a stack of highlighters, HOA minutes and wellness surveys, and a budget line named. In a way that hid what it did. I found a questionnaire where people were invited to list the tools they owned, the cameras, the tablets, the hours they weren't home. Because neighbors look out for neighbors. And when I dug into police reports, the few that existed, I saw the phrase that made my stomach drop. Resolved through community mediation, which is a nice way to say nothing. Stuck, I needed a human voice, so I went next door to Mrs. Lawson, our tomato queen, who always smells like basil and sunshine, and when I asked if anything had gone missing, she looked away. Like she'd swallowed a secret, then told me about her garden tools disappearing and 3 visits from Marla. First with lemon bars, and I'm so sorry. Second with a brochure about reframing attachment. Third with a worksheet called Healthy Sharing Habits. And by the end of visit 3, she said she was embarrassed for wanting her own tools back. Like wanting your stuff is a sign of spiritual failure, and that guilt sat in her voice like a bruise. I brought it to my wife, Jenna, who studies people for a living. She listened without interrupting and then said quiet and clinical, "That's grooming. That's how you separate a person from their instincts so you can lead them anywhere. And it hit me how fast a neighborhood can turn into a stage if someone confident enough is writing the script. In one more late-night scroll, I found a forum post from a town in Utah. A plain warning with a real name and number. Words like community therapy and resource alignment and healing circles. I called a tired man, picked up and told me how they didn't just lose money. They lost normal people were convinced to thank their abuser for the lesson. And at the bottom of my notes, I wrote the sentence that scared me the most. She moves. She learns, she repeats. The next morning I caught the kid again, this time in a Navy shirt with a utility services patch and a badge that looked legit. If you didn't stare too long, laser measure in hand. Routine infrastructure. Assessment, he said. Voice flatter. Like belief had sprung a leak out of community safety. I said, Tyler, it's not safety. If you're here to build a story about me. He held my eyes for the first time and said, she keeps changing what's right, and if I don't keep up, I'm the problem. And for a second, I didn't see a criminal. I saw a kid on a treadmill. Someone else controlled. Morales called and asked me to meet at the diner off Highway 7, coffee between us. He said, we've been watching not just your street. Said words like coordination and task force. Said, I can't give you a timeline. I can give you this. You're not crazy. Then asked me to keep living normal document. What I could let things show themselves. And I hated it. And I was grateful both truths can live in the same rib cage. 3 days later, an emergency meeting at the Pine Hollow Community Center flyer said escalating safety concerns and therapeutic intervention protocols. Attendance strongly encouraged the room. Looked like a TED Talk. Had a baby with jury duty. Folding chairs. Soft music. 3 easels of calming charts. A sign-in sheet. Asking for phone email and household assets. You're willing to share, Marla opened with friends and neighbors. Then talked about trauma responses and fear, and one resident whose paranoia threatened community harmony. She never used my name. She didn't have to. She put up photos of me, talking to neighbors on the sidewalk. Screenshots of public records. I'd pulled a timeline that turned my effort to protect my home into aggressive territorialism. Half the room nodded, grateful for certainty. The other half sat still, trying not to be seen. Ms. Lawson folded into her cardigan like a human disappearing act. Then Marla played her hand, the thing people do when they're used to winning. She said treatment required coordinated community pressure. Said isolation would make me safer for myself and others. Said trained specialists would apply consistent guidance until I embraced healthier sharing behaviors. And the air changed because that's not mediation. That's a plan to turn your neighbors into a tool. And then, the twist. The back door opened and Tyler walked in. Without a costume, just a hoodie and a face that looked 12. Marla brightened. Tyler has agreed to share how community resistance has impacted his growth, hand on his shoulder, but he swallowed and said, small and clear, I don't want to do this anymore. I thought we were helping people. But every time someone says no, Mom invents new words for why no is dangerous. He pointed at me. Doesn't seem dangerous. He seems tired. The projector fan became the loudest thing in the room. Marla's smile cracked and snapped back. He's processing transformation is messy. And he said louder, Mo. And for the first time, I felt the tide turn. The next morning brought engines. A cul-de-sac doesn't usually hear unmarked vehicles. Steady steps, jackets. You recognize even from a distance, Morales on my driveway with eyes that said, "Today, agents at Marla's door, with the confidence of people who already had what they needed." She came out clutching the clipboard like it could grant immunity. "This is ridiculous," she said. "We're community healers. This program is authorized." An agent read something. I couldn't hear. Pride and panic fought on her face. The cuffs went on it. She twisted toward the neighborhood and called, "You will thank me one day when you let go of your greed." And Tyler stood on the grass with empty hands and asked the saddest question I've heard. "Am I in trouble for helping people you felt the floor drop out under that kid?" Later at my kitchen table, Morales laid out what he could. Multiple towns, a pattern of manufactured authority, wrapped in therapy words, victims made to feel like reporting a crime proved they were sick. Charges with too many syllables, then he said. A sentence simple enough to carry. You did what you had to do. And when Jenna came home early and finally saw me in something other than novelty cotton, she rested her head on my shoulder and said, "I hate that I doubted you. Not because I didn't believe you, because I believed I was too smart to get played. And that's how people like her win." And yeah, that hit. Pine Hollow didn't heal in a montage. It looked like a town hall. 2 months later, where people stood and said, "I'm sorry," and I didn't know, and she made me feel small, Miss Lawson said, steady voice shaking hands. She didn't just take my tools. She made me say, "Thank you." And the room got quiet in that way. Truth demands a judge gave Marla years. I'm told she might serve less if she behaves. Tyler went to a juvenile program with mandatory counseling. I hope someone helps him. Separate love from control. And I joined the board, not because I wanted to, because apathy is how weeds get water. Our first meeting was boring on purpose. Potholes and pool filters. Neighbors checking phones. And it was the best sign we were getting back to normal. If you want a neat moral, I don't have one. This wasn't a fable. It was a Tuesday night that went sideways and kept going. But I will say this. If someone tells you your boundaries are harmful while standing on your porch with a clipboard, close the door, call someone with a badge you trust. And if your neighbor's story sounds too absurd to be true, don't dismiss it. Absurd things happen all the time. They just wear better clothes than you expect. Now tell me what you think. In the comments. Did I do the right thing, pushing back? Or did I escalate something that should have been mediated? Are HOAs the guardrail we need, or a little government we never voted for? Where's the line between community and control? And have you ever seen kindness get weaponized and called therapy? Drop your take. Argue if you have to share what you've seen. And if this made you look at your street a little clearer, hit like subscribe for more real stories with real endings. And send this to the one neighbor who swears that could never happen here.